Bonjour and hello, everyone. This is Shahir Sheikh. I am back with another episode of the Larvol Onca Data Podcast, of course. And with me is Matt Lewis and Bruno Larvol. So, Matt Lewis is the special guest today. I'm sorry, Bruno, for saying that, but we have to pay more attention towards Matt because he is the top AI voice in today's time. How does it feel, Matt?
I don't know about all that, but I mean, there are a lot of people talking about artificial intelligence broadly, and I kind of am joined by many of them. And there are also a lot of people asking a lot of questions about artificial intelligence in life sciences and in medical affairs and oncology and in many kind of related disciplines. And I appreciate the chance to be able to join Bruno and Shahir and your community and this audience to be able to continue this discussion and kind of answer some questions that are on people's minds, because 2024 is already quite busy and a little bit different than 2023 has been. So happy to kind of dive right in and kind of see where we go. So thanks again for having me on.
And in your position as the Chief AI Officer at Inisio, which is one of the top agencies in healthcare, you're in a great position to share your perspective on 2024. Now, as you can hear, it's a bit ironic that as we have the top voice of AI today, I lost my voice. So Shahir is going to do most of the talking as I'm resting my voice. I'm going to inject a few things, but the two of you are gonna drive the conversation. I'm just gonna sit here and look pretty for the most part. I might be able to inject a few points as well, but it's great to have you on the podcast again, Matt.
And great to be here. Thanks so much for having us again, Bruno. And by us, I mean me. But thanks very much. It's wonderful to be here. I don't know that I'm the special guest, but I think it is really great to be here. I'm sorry you can't speak more in general, but I guess that's more time for Shahir and I to talk. So thank you.
And since we only have limited time, I have actually got a lot of questions, but we kind of selected a few out of them. We filtered a few out of them because we only have a little bit of time. Uh, but if you don't mind, I am going to jump right onto the
Yeah.
questions. And considering the background, the vast background that you have, how do you currently see the impacts, basically the impacts on patient care and treatment outcomes um, as far as AI is in relevance?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and it's extremely relevant and very timely. I think many of us have been working in the broader space of medical affairs, medical communications, oncology for a long time, and there have been amazing advances from a research perspective in that space during that time. And I remember being at the ASCO when immuno-oncology first kind of had a proof of principle, and the field at large was describing what the shift would look like in the therapeutic landscape from a kind of historical precedents of chemotherapy and targeted molecules and all the rest to what immuno-oncology would really represent. And now that's like a mainstay. You don't even kind of imagine what cancer looks like without immuno-oncology. AI is kind of like immuno-oncology for everything health and life sciences and everything in all of modern society. Kind of a inflection point that changes what it means to create and to ideate and to think and to decide as a modern kind of knowledge worker out in the world. For the space that we're in, medical communications and medical affairs, it's not just changing our world. The world of, say, medical communications and medical writing and all the rest is also changing the world of the clinicians and the patients and the payers and the government stakeholders and others with whom we work. They're also seeing their worlds transformed by AI at the same time. So, for example, if you're a field-based medical science liaison and you're suddenly now using generative AI to summarize content before you prepare for a conversation with an opinion leader, which is common and many folks are doing nowadays, you're also going to go have a conversation with an opinion leader who's most likely at a hospital or at an academic institution or in private practice that is using some form of generative AI to summarize, transcribe, and share information in the clinical setting and in the administrative setting that didn't exist a year ago. So the generative AI environment has kind of washed over our entire kind of superstructure, our landscape at large, not just in these like limited instances in the kind of direct medical communication space that we see and observe ourselves. And it's changing and starting to change everything.
Well, you talked about transformation, and of course, with transformation comes a lot of challenges, right? So, how do you feel about that? What are some of the most significant challenges that you think that the companies are facing these days, or they might be facing, since you're very good at predicting? I've observed.
Yeah, I think that last year, 2023, it was kind of like, you have to kind of sum it up. It was like a big kind of the big question was kind of like, what is this? Like, what is this Chat GPT, Google Bard, now Gemini thing? Like, what is this all about? And like a lot of the time I spent was like answering the question of like explaining what it was and why it mattered and why it would be so impactful and that type of thing. This year is more like, how do I do this? Like, what do I do? Not what is it, but like, what do I do with it in my actual world? And there were some examples in 2023 of people kind of rushing in and trying to use it too quickly without really understanding their own environment, the problems they were trying to solve, thinking that like every Chat GPT hammer solved every nail in their environment, and that really wasn't the case. There wasn't like a good alignment of problem to solution, if you will. Now it's much more kind of like reasoned and trying to really understand like what are we really trying to solve for. There is a true statement out there in the data science environment. Before I had this role, I was chief data analytics officer for Nizio Medical, and there's a statement that people often quote that 90% of AI projects fail in large companies and big business, and that is true. It used to be the case that a lot of those big AI projects failed because the technology was pretty bad. The actual underlying models were not as robust as they are today, or the compute required to run them wasn't as strong as it actually is in 2024, or just because we didn't have the data that we needed to ingest and engineer and clean that is actually now available, or lots of other reasons. And the other reasons typically were things like, if you went into like a medical affairs environment, sometimes like the VP of medical affairs, even though they were ultimately paying for the project, like you were working with like a director of publications or a director of SciComm or director of field medical or whatever it was, they had a budget and that went up to someone, and that went up to the VP of medical affairs. The VP of medical affairs wasn't actually involved in the project. And so the people that were implementing the project didn't think it was important enough to actually like involve a wide enough group of people. And then when the technology was implemented, no one cared enough, and then they didn't use it, and then essentially died in the vine. So there are lots of human reasons why the tech failed back in the earlier days. Now in 2024, the tech is quite robust. It actually does work amazingly well, and all the kind of compute related problems are not really problems, but all the human problems still exist, and there are lots of human problems. You can't just find a proof of concept and show that it works and then say, okay, well, we summarize something, so therefore we can just change everything on a dime. You have to also think about, what does this mean for compliance? What does it mean for medical legal? What does it mean for regulatory? What does it mean for the work process? How do we train people about it? If the person that was doing this by hand is now doing it with generative, does that change their role? Does it change their job? Does it change their reporting structure? There are lots of human factor considerations about the work being implemented that people need to consider before standing up a piece of AI powered technology. And it isn't often that we just default to thinking about those things. And if you don't think about them, it's likely that an AI implementation will fail, not because the AI sucks, but because people don't think about the human considerations.
And of course, as we navigate through the rapid advancements, there's also the ethical considerations, right? So, how do you approach that uh, especially when advising on AI implementation in the current times?
Yeah, I mean, every organization in the broader environment, government, corporate, life sciences, regulated industry, agency, technology, et cetera, publisher even, should have a policy with regards to generative artificial intelligence at this point. Their policy should indicate that generative AI is essentially the transformative technology of our time, like, say, the steam engine was in the Industrial Revolution, or that electricity was, or fire, or the wheel, if you will. And it is at that level, and it is not debatable. And if their policy doesn't state that, or God forbid, they actually prohibit generative AI within their environment, anyone listening to this discussion or watching us now should seriously consider, if you work for an organization that prohibits or bans generative AI, of finding a new employer. Because it's like almost like saying to the staff that you work amongst, hey, go do your medical writing, your medcoms, your competitive intelligence, but go do it with a candlelight instead of being in the light of electricity. But that notwithstanding, you also need a set of generative AI principles that clearly explicate what your responsibilities look like with regards to ethics, compliance, governance, provenance, privacy, a whole host of kind of responsible AI expectations. And then once you train staff on what those principles look like, that they feel comfortable understanding where the boundaries are, what the guardrails look like. And when they get questions from clients, from colleagues, from partners, from patients, that they know kind of where to go. And if they have questions, that they can escalate to someone like me or a subject matter expert, someone else that hopefully can dive in a little bit deeper as things kind of exist. I think Bruno wants to jump in
Regarding the question of the approach of pharmas, uh, how many pharmas do you know?
a
Big
lot.
pharma
Oh,
that
sorry. That's
that
not the
how many pharma do you know that say you cannot use ChatGPT? Of course, they all say you cannot input confidential stuff
yeah,
in
yeah,
ChatGPT. They all say that, right? But how many say no? We got to build our own walled garden, ChatGPT like, intranet like
yeah.
environment, but you cannot use ChatGPT on your work computer or use it for business on your phone. You cannot use ChatGPT.
Yeah,
Or
I don't keep a tally of it, but I've heard stories that still does exist in some places, and not just in pharma, but in other firms in the space as well. And I think it's also somewhat of a challenge. Even at Inizio, it's a challenge. We had a policy like that back when ChatGPT first emerged in November 22. We relaxed and then finally deprecated that policy in early 23, like February of 23. But I'll tell you, there are still people. I mean, Inizio Medical is like 2,500 people. There are still people at Inizio Medical a year later that will tell you that we banned ChatGPT, and it's not true. But even as progressive as we are and as innovative as we are, we have hundreds of people doing generative AI experiments across the division. I'm sure you could still find people that in Inizu Medical will tell you that we prohibit ChatGPT, and we don't, because it just, they heard it one time 14 months ago, and that's what they think is still
yeah,
true. It just happens not to be true. But there are actually companies that do still prohibit it. I was at a conference maybe about a month ago in the UK, and someone came up to me and said their company bans it, and in addition to banning it, they strongly discourage its use, in implemented work. And it is you know discouraging, to say the least, to hear things like that. When you're at a conference where a third of the topics are using AI to innovate, and they're like, well, this is great, but I can't do any of this because my boss says it's a dirty bad thing, and I need to hide in the shadows. It's kind of tough.
I know we're getting toward the end of the 15 minutes we have together, but it's going to be so exciting to see the rest of 2024 and then 2025. It's incredible. Even the image, I'm generating a lot of image every day. I'm having fun with it. It's incredible what you can do. Of course, there's a controversies about making sure Nazis are,
Mm,
are ethnically diverse.
yeah.
Uh, but that's a different topic. So as we toward the end here, um, so for people who maybe follow AI in healthcare, in oncology, or people who might not follow it very closely, what would be either your takeaway or maybe your prediction for 2024?
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying earlier, if last year was kind of like the, what is this, and this is the kind of like so what kind of time right now. I think by the end of this year, the leadership of most life sciences companies, life sciences, sponsors, pharma, biotech, medical device, digital therapeutics companies will be asking for the proof in the pudding, if you will, and they'll be looking for evidence that AI is transformative, has improved efficiency, productivity, effectiveness, impact, outcomes, engagement, enjoyment, value, differentiation, innovation, all the things that companies care about. And they're going to
Yeah.
start seeing it in
Yeah.
spades. And then 2025 will be a really kind of interesting year as the real kind of transformation wave rolls across our organizations. And hopefully, with some consideration and some careful thought, the human side comes through,
Yeah.
because as you stand up that technology, you need the human piece to see kind of how it works well. And then we'll start hopefully seeing some real improvement and some real outcomes.
It does feel like the beginning of the internet, Matt, doesn't it? It's got that sense of really a new technology that is going to change so much of our life and is becoming very concrete very fast.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is. It is. Some things are changing quite fast, like you said, with the images and the videos and the rest. And some things do take much longer, because we do
Right.
need to demonstrate, even if they work really well in one setting. Like you're at a large pharmaceutical company, for example. It doesn't mean you can just take that
Yeah.
proof of concept and then show it again in another setting, and it's going to work that same way, because the culture is different, or the
Yeah.
context changes, or the people have different needs. So we do have to go through the our testing, so to speak, to validate it and ensure that it works for the specific environment that we're
Right.
in. But I think hopefully when we come out the other end, everyone will be better off for it.
All right.
Thank you very much, Matt. We
Thanks.
covered a lot of things in the 15 minutes that we had. I really appreciate you participating. Thank you so much, Matt, for participating. And same goes for you, Bruno. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.